Hello, dear viewers. Another week, another recording. This is going to be a very interesting one for me. I'm going to start off with a short story, somewhat short. I was in high school between 2008 and 2011. Prior to joining high school, I was always a very rambunctious kid. I was never really quite a good student. I was typically at the bottom to the middle of my class in terms of academic performance. But when I went to high school, I made the choice that I'm actually going to start paying attention in class. And simply by paying attention, not studying more, not necessarily being a better student, not necessarily being a kind of more, what's the word I'm looking for? Participating student, just by paying more attention, I was able to shoot the top of the class. So in my first semester of high school, I was the top student in my class, and I maintained this position for 4 years of high school. And of course, when you're the top academic students, other things in your life start to change. People expect you to be a certain way. And at that point in life, it's very easy to be influenced by your peers, by just the world around you. And so I was influenced in a very positive way because people assume the top academic student is going to be just a good human being. I wanted to be that way. So I was always the quiet kid in class. I was helping my teachers when I could. I was a bit of a teacher's pet. I was completing all my assignments on time. I was the first to come into all the lessons. I was a very, very good student. In this time, I remember when I was in year 9, I believe, we had a new student come in. And this student was from Canada. He was a really big dude, a really big, very huge and mysterious character. This was an all-boys school, by the way. And when he joined our class, there was this aura about him that he was a tough guy. A very, very tough guy. He didn't say much. He just went to the back of the class, didn't talk to anybody, but he just had this aura about that. He was going to be the guy who's going to take the role of the class's tough guy, right? When everyone, it's like when you're a teenager, it's like you smell the testosterone in other boys around you, right? It's like, oh man, he's bad. There's something about that's dangerous, right? And the older kids, they were able to smell that off of this boy, right? So the older kids, like one day at lunchtime, all the older kids came into my class, right? A bunch of the tough guys in the older classes or in the higher classes. They came to my class and they pulled this kid out of the classroom. Okay, they didn't pull him out of the classroom. They talked to him and they all just walked out together. And being in a boys' school, we knew, okay, everyone else knew, okay, something's about to go down. What's going to go down? So there was this procession out of our classroom. Like we all just went behind them. We just followed them. We were like, hey, a fight is going to break out. We want to watch how this new kid handles himself with these older kids, right? Against these older kids. So we all follow them to the back of the school. And it's like the older kids, some of the kids from that class, all the kids in my class were just there like watching, seeing what was going to happen, what was going to go down. Will it be a fight? How will this kid, stand against all these older kids? Like what would do? Like we were all excited. There was so much excitement in the air. And so we go to the back of the school, and what happens? One of the older kids pulls out a pack of cigarettes and hands the pack of cigarettes to the new kid. And the new kid looks at the cigarettes, looks at the older kids, takes one cigarette and starts smoking. And he doesn't cough, he doesn't look uncomfortable. He smokes like a natural, like he's been smoking for years, right? And remember, we're in year 10. So we're like, we're 15, maybe 16, around that, 14, 15, right? He smokes like a natural. And the older kids, now he's part of the group. He has their respect. And as I'm there watching, remember, I'm a good kid at this point in time. I whisper to the kid next to me, why would anyone smoke? Don't they know that it's bad for you? And another kid who was behind me, he hears me whisper this to this one kid, and he says, Oscar, you're gonna be so bad when you go to university. I wish I knew how right he was. At this point in time, year 10, I never drank, I never smoked, I never used any, illicit, illegal substances. Maybe the worst thing I did at this point in time was watch too much TV. Oh yes, I was abusing pornography. I was using pornography, but that was back in the day when I never really thought. I think most people my age never really thought that was a problem. So that was definitely the worst thing I did. I used porn. Maybe I watched too much TV. But outwardly looking in, like if you're someone who just knew Oscar or knew of Oscar, you'll assume Oscar he's a great kid. He's the kind of kid that anyone would want to have in their class. Any parent would want to have as a son. You might have assumed that. But little did I know that there was something I was denying myself at that point in time that would later come to affect me. Now flash forward to 2011. I graduated from high school. And I decided, I don't know, something hit me, that I want to start smoking cigarettes. Maybe it was the image of the Marlboro Man, maybe it was the image of smokers in movies and how cool and self-confident they seemed. I wanted to be that way, right? Because despite being this top student all through high school, I always felt like there was something that was missing inside of me. I never quite knew what that was. I lacked a level of self-confidence that I thought something from outside could add onto me. So I latched onto this idea that the guys who seem cool in movies, who seem self-confident in movies, they're all smokers. So maybe if I smoke, I'm going to be like them. So on this particular day, I made a walk from my parents' home to the nearest mall. It was maybe a 45-minute walk. And I went to the mall, went to a supermarket in the mall, and I bought a pack of Dunhill cigarettes. On the walk back, opened the pack, took all the cigarette, put it in my mouth, and lit the match. It was actually a match on the lighter, so I lit the match. And I inhaled my first cigarette. And it was the worst experience of my life. I coughed so much. It was so disgusting. It was rough on my throat. I threw the entire pack of cigarettes into a ditch. Did not smoke another cigarette. I was 16 at the time, so I didn't smoke another cigarette for how long? Like for another, 5 years actually. For another 5 years, I didn't smoke another cigarette. So now we go into 2000. Actually, it was 3 or 4 years. 2016. 5 years, yeah? 2016. I'm in Japan at this time. I'm not a student. I come back to Japan to find a job. And the first job I had when I got back into Japan was, I was a bartender. And when you walk in a bartender, people are smoking around you. Typically it was the customers. But I wasn't really interacting with the customers that way, so I never really got a chance to smoke with them. But I had one coworker who was always taking smoke breaks. I wanted so much to take breaks as much as he did because I was working from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. 6 days a week. I was exhausted. But this one guy was taking like a break every other hour. So one time I simply asked him for cigarettes. And again, it was terrible, but this was a chance for me to take a break. So I kept asking for a cigarette every other hour, and he was really cool. Hey, Oscar, you want to smoke? You want to go for a smoke? You want to go for a smoke? Like, yeah, let's go. I'm going to smoke. I need my breaks. A few days later, I'm buying my own pack of cigarettes now because having a cigarette simply meant I could take a break. Right? But then there's the habit starts to form. It's like now I have this pack in my breast pocket, like having a pack of cigarettes, just simply smoking, is enough, excuses me from the group. I can just leave the group, go outside, like I was isolating myself. It's like, this is Oscar's special time. I can be alone with my thoughts. I can look at social media on my own. I don't have to interact with so many people. And man, it feels so good to have a reason to excuse yourself from the group, because I didn't always want to be a part of the group. It's like I thought smoking would make me social, would make me self-confident, but smoking was simply a good enough reason to avoid being social. Smoking was a good enough reason to avoid socializing with people. And so I kept smoking. And at some level, I became so attached to smoking, like smoking became who Oscar was. Oscar was now a smoker, and I wanted to have that image because smokers are cool, smokers relax, smokers are confident being by themselves, right? I didn't have to try to socialize. I was a smoker. Smokers don't really try to do so much. There is that cool, mysterious aura of confidence around smokers, right? Maybe it's something about the smoke wafting all around you. It's something about you holding onto a Marlboro cigarette. It's something about just, the look in your eye as you lift your face up after taking a puff. Whatever it is, there's something that made me feel cool while I was smoking. I smoked for so long. So it was between 21 and 29. I've been smoking. Between 21 and 29. And at some point, I was trying to hide my smoking from my wife. I don't know what made me think I could do that, because it's obvious. You smell like cigarette smoke. My breath smells like tobacco. It's on my clothes. It's in my hair. It's on my fingers. And I thought I could hide it, right? But my wife knew. And at some point, she stopped asking me, Oscar, did you smoke? Were you smoking? And at some point, she stopped caring and I stopped trying to hide it. So I just started smoking and said, I'm going out to smoke. I'm going out to smoke. I'm going to buy a pack of cigarettes. And I was just smoking all the time. And she stopped caring about it. And the reason why people, especially me, the reason why I smoked was because smoking, even after I quit drinking, smoking is one of these habits that it's not really a problem to people around you. The worst thing about smoking is that it smells bad, right? And you can say, well, you will get lung cancer, but how many people are thinking about what might happen to them 40 years down the line? How many people are worrying about what might happen to them 40 years down the line? You see, now the difference with smoking and drinking, because these are my two habits, or rather were my two habits, was that when I drink, the consequences of my drinking are here with me now, right? Whether it's, being, just being messy, being moody, being angry, being emotional, the vomiting, the hangovers, whatever it is, it's going to hit me now or the next day, right? But with cigarette smoking, with tobacco smoking, the worst thing that's going to happen right now is that you might not like the smoke around me. And the way to go about that is let me just go and smoke outside, because, hey, I don't even want to talk to you that much. So me smoking is an excuse to leave this situation right now, at least for a few minutes, right? Smoking doesn't affect me right now. If anything, it makes me a bit better right now. It creates some distance between me and the other person, just enough for me to not be a bother to them and for me to not feel like they're a bother to me. It heightens my alertness. Nicotine does that for you, actually. It makes you more alert for a bit, right? It's kind of like, it's like coffee. It's like a hit of it's like a cappuccino. Smoking is like a cappuccino. It makes everything a bit better for a short while. So I didn't have to stop smoking, right? And so I would smoke. Like, I've been a teacher for a long time, and in between all my classes, I will leave my class, go and have a smoke, come back in. I will smoke. When I will wake up, I will go to the gym. As I'm walking to the gym, I will have a smoke. When I leave the gym, I will have a smoke. Come back home, take a shower, make my coffee, and as I'm drinking my coffee, I will have a smoke. So I was smoking as I'm walking to this train station. Smoke as I get off the train and leave the train station. Smoke in between my lessons. Smoke after my lessons. Smoke in between my shows. Smoke as a break from writing, as a break from doing anything I'm doing, basically. I think I will have like at least 10 cigarettes a day. At least. That was when I quit drinking. When I was drinking, oh man, there were days when I had like 2 packs a day. But at some point I realized I have to quit this habit. It's not benefiting me anymore. It's like 2 reasons why I want to quit. Number 1, I thought having kids will make me want to quit immediately, but that wasn't the case. It's only when I saw 2 things from my daughter. Number 1, I've mentioned here before that kids tend to mimic what you do, not what you say. And so I like to do push-ups in my apartment. Just randomly, I'll just like I'm just watching TV, the kids are relaxing. There's not much for me to do. Let me just do a few push-ups. And my daughter will see that. And my daughter, every once in a while, she will try and do push-ups. I've never told my daughter to do push-ups, but she just saw me doing it over and over again, that she wanted to start doing it. Now, my daughter also knows that when I say I'm going outside, she knows I'm going to smoke. So she will even ask me, Dad, are you going to smoke? And I'll say, yes, I'm going to smoke. And at some point, my daughter saying to me, now she turned 3 years old, this was 1 year ago. She says to me, Dad, I'm a big girl now. I can smoke too. That was the first thing that got me concerned. I didn't stop, but it got me concerned. A few months later, we went to visit a friend. And as we were leaving my friend's home, we board a train and come back to the Osaka city. And my daughter was moody. She was very moody. Maybe she was tired, she was hungry, whatever it is. So I tried to tell her, sit down. Stop taking so much space on the train. Come closer to me, right? And she got so angry. She said, Dad, you smell bad. And I knew immediately that it was all the cigarettes. The smoke was all over me. I could smell it on myself. And that made me very self-conscious. Like, oh man, I really need to quit. But it's one of those things where I say, you know what? This is the last pack of cigarettes I'm going to have when I have 19 cigarettes in the pack. I'm going to finish the 19 cigarettes. Then I'll quit. Right? But it's it takes me 2 days to finish that pack, maybe 3 on some occasions. So by the time I'm getting down to the last 2 cigarettes, hey, fuck, I need another pack of cigarettes. I even forget that I told myself I need to quit. But last year, at the end of 2023, I had a very big argument with a family member, an argument about addiction. Not necessarily about cigarettes, but about addiction in general. And I realized while talking to this family member that instead of trying to convince them to quit a habit, I should act as an example. So I told them that this is the year I'm going to quit smoking. And at this point, I had 3 cigarettes in my pack. And this was on December 31st. I told them when this pack is done, I am done with smoking. I am done. And my relative said, yeah, cool. Let's see how things will go. I don't know if they believed me. I think they might have doubted me because at that level, I had some self-doubt as well. But I say, when this pack is done, I am done. And so on December 31st at around maybe 8 p.m., I smoked my last cigarette. And my relative was still smoking. Now the argument we had was not about cigarettes, it was about another addiction. He kept on smoking even after I had quit. And I remember on first we were taking a walk around. We walked from my apartment to church together. I'm not smoking, he's smoking. We went past by a convenience store so we can buy another pack of cigarettes. And he's smoking next to me I really want to smoke. But I was like, hey, at least for now, while he's here. Let me not smoke so I can convince him that it's possible to quit something, you know? And so I didn't smoke. And every day since then, it's been like, hey, I can go another day without a cigarette. And I took this notion, this idea from Alcoholics Anonymous. Then the idea is, hey, let's just try to get to bed sober. Let's just try to go to sleep without having a cigarette. And that can only work long enough, because unlike AA and alcoholism, I didn't really have a support group. I don't have a Smokers Anonymous with me. Maybe there is one, I just haven't found one. So I have to depend on, number one, mental tricks. And number two, my own willpower. And mental tricks and willpower can only push you so far. So what is this entire talk about? Is that it is in fact possible to quit anything. This is now January 21st, 2024. It has been 21 days since I had my last cigarette. Now, old wives' tales or whatever, I don't know where this idea came from that it takes 21 days to quit a habit. I can tell you right now that even as I'm recording this, I feel like smoking. It's actually the urge to smoke that has pushed me to record this video. And one might ask, how are you able to last this long without any social support? So I'll talk about number one, mental tricks. And I think I've mentioned here before and in a podcast as well that there's one thing I repeat to myself over and over again whenever I want to smoke. And the phrase is this: quitting smoking is so hard, so I'm just gonna keep smoking instead. One more time. Quitting smoking is so hard, so I'm just gonna keep smoking instead. And the more I repeat that to myself, the more I realize I don't want to be that person. The kind of person that says, it was too hard to stop, so I just kept doing it. It was too hard to stop, so I just kept doing it. Now, like I've said, replace the smoking with anything. Quitting drinking is too hard, so I'm just going to keep drinking instead. Quitting pornography is too hard, so I'm just going to keep watching pornography instead. Quitting social media is too hard, so I'm going to keep using social media instead. That works to some level, to some degree, right? It works to some level. Now, prior to that, you even have willpower. It's like, hey, the willpower will help you just not make that choice to have the first cigarette or the first drink. Let me use all the willpower I have not to have that first cigarette. Because I know it's like, what I've come to realize in these 21 days is that choice is a factor to a degree for any addiction. To a degree, choice is a factor. As an alcoholic, and this is also me speaking as someone who goes to AA, I realize that my alcoholism is always off. But having the first drink turns it on. Having the first drink turns my alcoholism on, right? So all I have to do is make the choice not to have the first drink. That's the extent of my willpower insofar as addiction goes. Just don't have the first drink. And the same can be said of smoking. I know there's no way I can have just one cigarette. If I ask someone for one cigarette, I'll want to buy a pack for myself. There's no way I can just watch a minute of porn. I'm going to finish. I must finish. Right? So think about it this way. It's like, use your willpower to avoid having the first of whatever substance or activity that you're addicted to. Right? Don't partake in that activity for 1 minute. Don't have the first cigarette, the first drink. That's how far the willpower goes. Now, once you've surpassed If you're able to avoid having the first one, now that's when the sentence comes in, the phrase that I use. Quit, like, even though you avoid it, you say, okay, I'm not going to have that one drink, that one cigarette. You still want to. At least I know I still want to. So that's when I repeat the phrase to myself over and over again. Quitting smoking is so hard, so I'm just going to smoke instead. Quitting smoking is so hard, so I'm just going to smoke instead. Quitting smoking is so hard, so I'm just going to smoke instead. And the more I realize this, the more I realize, hey, is this the kind of person I want to be? This person seems pathetic. This person seems really, really pathetic. I don't want to be this person. I want to say I was able to quit. I feel proud to say that I haven't had a cigarette in 21 days. I feel strong. There's a level of self-confidence that comes from that. But then again, even that phrase can only push me so far. Now, going back to why I had my first cigarette when I was 16, the feeling of emptiness, that there's something missing inside of me. There's this hole that I need to fill with something. It's like I was never quite complete. And that's why I tried the cigarettes. Well, the cigarettes don't work. Well, now, it's like I had pornography. But the pornography was still, it was something I did in shame, right? I couldn't really do it with people, so it never filled me the way I needed to be filled. It's never completed Oscar as part of a group. So then I found drinking. And drinking, in the beginning, could be done with people. It was a social activity. And it made me more confident, feel more self-love. At least it seemed as though that thing existed while I was drunk. So it's like I kept doing it. And even when I was able to push everyone away, and when I started enjoying drinking on my own, I still felt like when I'm drunk, this thing that was missing while I was sober seemed to exist, right? And then I found smoking again, and smoking is something that I can do around people to a degree, right? I could walk and smoke, it makes me feel cool, and I could smoke and excuse myself from the group knowing that they know he's excused himself to go and have a cigarette. It's not because he's not social. He's going to do this thing that maybe he's excusing himself because he's a decent human being. He doesn't want the smell to bother them, to bother us. He's a nice guy. He's a good guy. He's going to do his thing on his own, right? So smoking gave me that to a degree. So now I don't have, 21 days later, I have no tobacco. 3 years later, I have no alcohol. I have no porn. There's still this, I can feel the emptiness. It's like the emptiness is starting to seem so clear once more. It's like, oh man, there's something missing. There's something missing. But thank God. Thank God I feel this thing missing inside of me. Because I realize the thing missing in my life is a connection to a higher power. And this is something I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, is that as human beings, we do need a higher power. And I'm not one of those guys that says your higher power can be anything, because I have found for myself, my higher power has been Christ. It has been Christ. And so I've gone back to my religion. I'm trying very hard not to half-ass my religion, not to half-ass prayer, not to half-ass meditations, not to half-ass my religious rituals. From the age of 10, maybe 12, to the age of around 25, 26, I had proclaimed that I was an atheist. But going into AA made me realize through conversation with my sponsor that I need to go back to the church. Now let me be clear, my sponsor is not a Catholic. My sponsor is not religious. He is religious, but he's definitely not a Catholic. But conversations with him encouraged me to go back to the church. And this 2023, I was really able to rekindle my relationship with the church. Thanks primarily to my mother coming to Japan and pushing me to get my children baptized. And I've realized, hey, I need to get back into this thing myself. And so now, when my willpower is failing me, when my mental tricks are failing me, what do? I pray in silence to myself, and the prayer is this: God, please give me strength. God, please give me strength. And this isn't some kind of hack. It's like I am choosing to believe that God will give me strength because I know He will give me strength. And what happens when I do this? I get the strength not to smoke a cigarette. Now, for those who know me, you know that I have a part-time job at 7-Eleven. And 7-Eleven in Japan, it's basically a job where I sell tobacco and alcohol. That's basically 60% of my job, selling cigarettes and alcohol. I'm basically selling cigarettes and alcohol. That's what it means working at 7-Eleven in Japan. And so for the whole night, it's just selling drinks, selling cigarettes, selling drinks, selling cigarettes, selling drinks, selling cigarettes. And you have no idea, someone who's trying to quit smoking, how hard it is for me to hand people a pack of Camels, a pack of Marlboros, a pack of Parliaments. I really, really want to smoke. So number one, it's like, I'm not going to have a cigarette. I wouldn't buy a cigarette. Then number two is like, quitting smoking is so hard, so I'm just going to keep smoking instead. Quitting smoking is so hard, so I'm just going to keep smoking instead. And number three, it's like, silently, in my head, God, give me strength. God, give me strength. God, give me strength. And I realize with each silent prayer, I get stronger. And with each day, I am able to overcome this addiction. With each single day, I am able to overcome this addiction. And now, 21 days later, I haven't had a cigarette. And I am definitely much stronger today than I was on December 31st. Now, if I can do it, you can do it too. Unlike alcoholism, I do not have Smokers Anonymous. And definitely, it is much easier to quit any habit if you have a community supporting you in that endeavor. It is much, much easier to quit any habit if you have a community supporting you in that endeavor. But if you do not have a community supporting you, you have one, your willpower, and number two, you have your higher power. I have Christ, and you can have Christ too. Christ is waiting for you. God wants to give you all the strength you need to persevere through anything. God wants to give you all the strength you need to persevere through absolutely anything. And let me tell you something. Quitting smoking is not a big deal. It's not a big deal. There are bigger problems in the world. But those problems in the world cannot be solved if we cannot solve our own basic problems. Hey, Oscar, you can't be worrying about Gaza, Palestine, Israel, Ukraine when you can't even quit smoking. You can't be worrying about all the evil in the world if you can't even provide for your family. You can't be worrying about how much evil is taking place in the world. I can't be dealing with all of that if I can't even deal with my own tiny world. So don't be talking about, Hamas, IDF, Ukraine, Russia, Darfur, wherever evil is happening. When you have a snake in your own garden, you have a snake in your own garden, I have a snake in my garden, and I realized number one it was alcohol, then pornography, then tobacco, then there are a list of things that I need to get rid of in my life. If you look at all the successful people you might admire, you realize it's not so much what they do, it's what they don't do. If you actually pay attention to all of these people, you realize it's not so much what they do, it's what they don't do. I realize I do too much. And a lot of this too much is destructive. It's not constructive, it's just taking things down. But if I can step away from these things, I realize I actually have the mental capacity to build things up. But first, I need my higher power. I need Christ. And this is why I believe step one to becoming a better human being is finding your higher power. And with that, I'm going to bring the recording to an end. And I do hope that you all find your higher power. Thank you very much.